Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to have back with me CJ Goodwyn to end our series of Into the Darkness, which is about his movie, Sherlock Holmes, Mare of the Night. CJ, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'm glad to be back and appreciate you doing the show for us. It's been a lot of fun.
As our listeners know, I've had the opportunity to meet and visit with not only CJ, his cast and crew, but those involved in production and other parts of the film. It's been a great journey, but we're here to both celebrate you. We're here to celebrate the movie and find out what's been happening with CJ since the last time we talked. And that was the first episode of this podcast series where you talked to us about kind of where you were in post-production. And I was wondering if we might start off, CJ, by asking, what have you done sort of post-production over the last couple of months to have the film ready for its premiere?
Yeah, trying to think back when we first had our first talk, might have been September or October, but I think during that time, the film had been completed video-wise and clean audio. And then we were working on the music side of things and sound effects with my composer, Antonio Guidanti, who lives in Canada. And so from that, we didn't wrap the music side of things or the sound effects until January 1st. So the film comes out, this Friday. So we were obviously cutting it close, but I feel like that happens with a lot of films and, major studios as well, especially back in like the 80s and 90s. If you watch some of those shows, about making the movies, they're always pushing those crunch times. Definitely not something I wanted to do. We were planning on it being done December 1st, so we had at least, 6 to 8 weeks before the film, but things happen. But that's kind of what we were working on. Antonio made a beautiful score. And for me, it was really just making sure the sound effects were in the right spots that I wanted. And we had a lot of on and off conversations just to make sure that we were both in agreement of we enjoy how the music tells the story, helps the story, all that good stuff. So that was kind of finishing the film on that side. But while Antonio was working on getting the music and sound effects going, I was busy behind the scenes setting up theatrical release, which I got with city-based cinemas first here in San Antonio. And then through them, after having a good, basically, once it went live, we had a lot of people buy their tickets. And so we sold out 2 screenings within 48 hours. And that was in November. And that doesn't really happen too much, even for indie films, being our film was 2.5 months away. So that kind of got us on the radar of some booking companies who then reached out to me to get the film into more theaters. I could have gone really over 100 theaters if I wanted to across the nation, but I decided not to just because I didn't have the proper funding for promoting or marketing the film. And after speaking with other directors that kind of went that route, they wish they wouldn't have, because no one went to go see their movie because there's no way to market their film. And so I took that into account. So I really just kind of stayed San Antonio first, although I did do a Bryan and Lubbock theater as well, just to kind of see what would happen organically. So I've been working really hard, working with booking agencies, the theaters, getting the film DCP'd, which is digital cinema package. Your film has to go through that process to get into movie theaters. And so that was a challenge, trying to find the right company that's going to work with you, especially for myself, being really my first time getting into the actual movie theater chain. I wanted to make sure I did it right. And I found a company that would be able to answer a lot of my questions and kind of help me and guide me through this process. And I did. That company's name is Meta Media. They work really well with indie filmmakers. So I was happy for that. And then it's just been a lot of marketing and promoting, social media blasts, the trailer, posters, going to the movie theaters, talking to guests individually, going to film networking events, really just anything and everything outside the box that we can do here locally in San Antonio. That's not going to cost an arm and a leg, basically. So
Let me circle back to the DCP. Unfortunately, I'm of an age where when I think of a movie theater, I think of somebody up there putting a new reel on. but that's not how movies are transmitted or shown. Could you explain that part of the movie viewing or film viewing process?
Yeah, sure. So what I said before, like the digital cinema package, DCP is what it's called. Every film has to go through that now. And a lot of those companies will now just send it through basically the cloud where they can download it to their computer system at those theaters, but then they can obviously project it through their projecting systems there. It's one of the reasons why there's power outages, like it's over. Like you can't watch the movie anymore because it's basically on a computer. Now, not all the theaters still take that style. Some of them still need an external drive. So for me, I have some theaters that needed like the external drive that has the DCP on it, where they actually just plug it into their computer system that projects the film. And others would just send it digitally across the cloud and they upload it. It's one of the positives of going through a company kind of like that. 'Cause let's just say like the film does take off and now they want it in 1,000 theaters. They could literally just hit a button that sends it to all those theaters for me and it would be there, within a couple of hours compared to doing the mailing system, which could take 3 to 5 days or even longer if you run into big old snowstorms like we just got here in San Antonio. So,
So, what you mentioned the trailer. Could you say a few words about what the trailer is or was and the importance of the trailer in your pre release marketing efforts, CJ?
sure. So I think for the trailer, you want to have something that kind of hooks the audience. It really grabs their attention. I think, especially nowadays, people's attention spans are definitely not what they used to be. A lot of people just scroll and click through things pretty quickly. So you want something that's going to grab them as quick as you possibly can. I think our trailer does that. There's a quick, girl being scared, then you hear Dr. Watson scream, no, and then it's these loud noises, and it's like, wow, what was that? And so I think that's very important. And then that can kind of get your audience to continue to watch. Now, with my trailer, I want it to be very interesting, intriguing, something where the audience wants to know more. Like, I really liked what I saw, but I want to know more. I want to see more. I think there's a lot of Hollywood trailers that, in my opinion, show way too much. They'll show like almost the entire movie. And it's like, well, you just kind of ruin like the ending for me. Like, I already know what's going to happen. And so I try not to do that. I have other studios telling me that I need to do that, and I go against it. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, I'm not gonna like show the spoilers in my trailer. I think what we have is enough. It's a Sherlock Holmes film. We show the audience that it's a different take on the character. It's a darker tale of Sherlock, and there's some horror aspects to it. There's some drama to it, and that to me was enough. And I think anyone that enjoys Sherlock or that type of genre, that should be enough for them to want to check it out more, or at least do some research to see if it's a film they want to go check out. So that was my whole reasoning of making that trailer, really just to kind of hook the audience, give them a small taste of what's coming, and then the rest is up for them to come out and check it out.
You shared much of the work you were doing to publicize the film on your social media channels. And so I got to sort of follow you in that part of your journey. Was it literally just calling individual theaters? Was it dealing with movie chains? Were there agents or other third parties involved? What was that? Or maybe all of the above?
Yeah, so I think as an independent filmmaker, you're going to be reaching out to a lot of the theaters yourself, trying to get in contact to set up certain deals. You can do four walling. I suggest not doing that. That's basically where you're paying the theater a certain amount of money, basically renting out a screen, and then you're trying to fill that theater not only to make that rental cost back, but then also some funds on the back end, which can be really challenging for an indie filmmaker. So I don't suggest doing that. What I suggest doing is working with theaters that are willing to do a ticket split where there's no up cost rental fee at all. They like your product. They know you're going to work really hard on your end to bring the audience to the theater. And you kind of make a deal that way, which normally is like a 50-50 split on the ticket revenue for some of these theatrical theaters, and a lot of times it's like the art houses. Like, you're not gonna be able to do that for mainstream theater chains like AMC, like, that's not gonna happen. So that's what I did on that end. On the other end, getting into, say, like Santico's Theater and the Premiere Theater, that was through a booking agency. So because I did so well getting city-based cinemas going with over 300 tickets sold in 48 hours, I got on their radar. So they reached out to me wanting to put the film into these other bigger movie chains where there's no way I'd be able to get that response by myself because they don't deal with that. Santico's, they go through a booking agency. They don't deal with one-on-ones.
Let me change the focus just a little bit to the podcast series that this is the concluding episode. I've been universally impressed with the people that we've had on the podcast. They're obviously very passionate about what they do, what you're doing, and they got to tell their story. And you had some first time actors, or at least a first time actor, in addition to all the extras you had. You had some first time people in other roles as well. Looking back now, did you see yourself as sort of the mentor at the time? Because it sure seemed like to me you were doing a lot of teaching, if I can use that word. And if there's one theme from everyone I interviewed, it was CJ was always available, which surprised me a little bit, but it indicated to me that perhaps some directors are not available. So I was wondering if you'd talk about that process of how you brought along your first production assistant, your makeup artist, Taylor, for instance, in her first role. Obviously, very different roles in the film, but how did you work with them, teach them, encourage them, that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I think for me personally, it's just something it's just who I am. I really want to teach and coach and try to make the best product possible, but also help everyone that's involved and help grow and help their careers as much as I possibly can. I always tell everyone I don't have all the answers, but I'll definitely give it 100%. I think if you're the leader of whatever you do in life, you have to lead by example, not with words, but through actions. And I feel like I do that. It's something that I strive towards. It's something that I promise really everyone that comes onto my films, especially if it's a low budget movie like this one was. That's what makes this film so special that we are in the movie theaters because, it doesn't really happen, for indie films on a low scale like ours. But even from the beginning, I promised that we get into movie theaters, which we did. No one on the film got paid. It's just all passion and love and being volunteers. And, for them to be able to take that risk and to join a film like that that's going to take 3 years to make, I think it's my duty to make sure that they get everything they possibly can out of this. And so what I can bring is my experience and just trying to help teach and coach them along the ways. Again, it's my fourth featured film, so I've kind of done everything. I've worn a lot of hats, which you kind of have to in the indie world, and so I can at least take newbies, not professionals, but if they're new, I can help train them and teach them almost in every field on the film side. And if you're a new actor, like Taylor was to this movie, I can definitely help guide them in the right direction, let them know the best practices to kind of take, to continue to grow and be a force in the film world. I can set them up with people like Les and Michelle that can help guide her as well and kind of prep her and get her ready for her scenes. We had a lot of talks, on and off the set, just trying to make people as comfortable as I possibly can. And, it's really nice for all the actors and the crew members to say all those things. I really appreciate the kind words. And yeah, man, there's just a lot, that goes into it. And for me, I don't want to let anyone down. They're putting their trust into me to make this film. And it kind of, the film kind of rests on my shoulders, right? I will take it as far as I possibly can. And if I stop, or if I say, I've said this before in other podcasts, like, "Oh, that's good enough. Let's just move on." If I have that mentality, then the film definitely does not come out as good as it should be. And it's an interesting thing because, you have to know when to push, your crew and your actors, and you also have to know when not to, when to kinda let up and let them breathe a little bit. Now, in no way am I, a hard ass. I'm not, like, in their faces yelling like a drill sergeant or anything like that. But there are moments where I have to pull people aside and have serious conversations, or I have to remotivate them and let them know why this is such an important moment in the film to kinda just regain their focus. And then there's moments where you have to just have fun because we just went through a 12-hour session. It's freezing outside, it's raining, everybody's miserable, and so you have to find a way to keep their spirits up. I mean, all that stuff. I like to say if you're an indie filmmaker and you write and direct your movies and you're producing it like I do, you're almost like a therapist and a manager for all the cast and crew on your film because I talk with everyone. It can be a PA, an extra, the lead, all the department heads. My door is completely open because I do want them to feel as comfortable as possible. And I do want them to grow and get something out of this experience. A lot of times you may only work with these individuals one time. And, this might be the only moments you have with them on this film for a lot of reasons. They might move on to bigger and better, or this may not be another project that lines up with what they're doing at that moment in their career. So I try to be in the moment. I try to give them everything I possibly can so they can learn and grow and come out better than when they came in. And I hope I've done that. That's definitely something I strive towards. It's not just making a movie. It becomes so much bigger than that. The movie is sort of like the seed, and then it just builds and you create this environment and you bring all these different people in that have all different opinions, different beliefs. I mean, just they're all different. And so you have to be able to navigate through that, be there for everyone, learn all their strengths and weaknesses, and just try to find that balance where we can all come together and make the perfect storm and come out of it with a really beautiful film, which I believe we have. So,
Let me turn to the premiere. And you've already told us the theater is premiering, but maybe tell us again any special events planned around the premiere, or for those who've never been to a film premiere, is it really a red carpet? Will you say some words? Will the cast and crew say any words? What's going to be the audience, not participation, but what's going to be the audience experience in addition to seeing your film?
sure. Yeah, I think red carpet premieres or events, they're a lot of fun. It's the first time the film's going to be shown publicly. All the cast and crew, this will be their first time to see the movie. And so that's really exciting for them. They've been waiting a long time. So the energy in the building is going to be insane. It's a little bit different than just going to watching the film without a red carpet or all the cast and crew. There's just a really awesome energy involved. Everyone's excited. And, what comes with it, obviously there is a red carpet. You get the backdrops of the film and the theater you're at. You're taking photos with everyone on the red carpet. Media will be there. And so you're getting interviewed by local media people. Magazine and podcast people are there as well. So they're doing their due diligence. And then you get some influencers from the city. They could be a big name within the city that come out and watch the film to support the local arts. And then everyone gets to dress up, so it's a moment to wear your finest outfits if you like, kinda like the Oscars, I guess. And it's just a celebration, it's sort of the end of the road, right? You spent all this time making the film, now it's finally here, they're gonna get to watch it. And so it's in the beginning, it's a lot of love and excitement, and then after it's over, it's, for I think everyone's gonna be on a high still, but, for me, it's like, well, that's it. I just spent 3 years for this moment, and the film will continue to do things, in theaters, hopefully for the next few months, but then it's over, and then it's on to the next, and it's crazy how fast that happens. You spend 3 years of your life for a 2-hour movie. So I think if you're in the arts, you have to be a little crazy and passionate because that's what you're doing. And so it's gonna be a lot of fun though, man. There's a lot of cast and crew that I haven't seen since filming, so it'll be fun to reunite and see them. I think one of the things that people figure out in the film industry, if they don't already know this, and I had to tell some of the newbies as well, we're always going to have a connection. This film will always connect all of us in some way or form. But it's not like I'm going out and hanging out with all these people on a daily basis or a weekly basis. A lot of these people I saw on set and that was it. So it's not like we become like best friends and we're hanging out all the time. And so it can be hard for some people because you spend 6 months with all these people, you became a family and you had all these great moments, and it's like it's over and we're off back to our normal lives and we're on to our next projects. And a lot of times you may not ever hook back up with them again. And so it can be hard on that side of things. But the beauty about it now, I guess, with nowadays is you have social media. So if nothing else, you can continue to follow them. You can continue to reach out at least through that aspect. But I don't know, man. It's a beautiful moment. It's something I've been striving for a long time, to get the film into theaters. And I'm happy that it's this film that is my first time in theaters. Obviously, I made other movies, but I don't think they were ready for the movie theater experience, in my opinion. But I do believe that this movie is ready for the movie theaters, and I'm excited for people to see it.
CJ, I've not asked you this, but I wanted to end this podcast with the following question. What would you say to the high school student, the college student, the 30-year-old who thinks he can make movies better than he sees with his mother on the screen?
Mhm.
What would you tell them to encourage them or not about moving into becoming an independent filmmaker or being part of that process to just fulfill a dream?
Yeah, I would say anyone can do it. You really can. I'm living proof. I did not go to film school. I started when I was 30. That's what Tom was referencing back in the first podcast. My mom and I watching films, and I decided that I could make movies too. And I think anyone can do it. It's extremely hard. It's going to be very, very difficult. You're going to have ups and downs, wins and losses. And, motivation can only take you so far. You're going to have to be super disciplined within the process, stay the course, believe in yourself, believe in your vision, your work, make a film that you want to see. Don't make a film that you think people want to watch. That's not going to get you through. Just make your own brand. I think in the beginning, there's a lot of excitement. Every film I make, there are many people that do not make it from start to finish because they realize how really difficult it is. And it's not a luxury, like it's pretty brutal. I can give millions of examples and I'll just give one. Just a typical day would be the filmmaker. Let's say you have a call time at 8 a.m. Well, if you're the filmmaker and it's an hour away, you're getting up at least at 4:30 in the morning to get all your equipment, load everything up. It's 40 degrees outside. You drive to the destination. You're getting all the equipment set up, shot list, everything set, ready to go for when the cast and crew shows up. They show up. You go through the filming techniques, all the stuff. You do like a 15-hour day. Now it's like midnight and you start breaking stuff down. You drive home at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and you wake up and do it again the next day. So that is a typical featured film life. And if you don't have that discipline and drive to push through, then yeah, you're not going to make. And that's why a lot of people don't. I think the dream is always there, but man, I feel like just like anything in life though, like it doesn't really matter what you're doing, like whatever profession you take on, like it's extremely hard and you just have to be disciplined with it, and that would be my message to everyone, that anyone that wants to make a film, you can do it. You just got to stay disciplined, do your homework, do your due diligence, make sure pre-production is super solid before you go into filming. And then as I preach all the time, you need to be patient. A lot of people want to try to get something out as soon as possible. Be extremely patient. And on the technical side, make sure your audio is perfect. That's more important than anything else that you'll have when you're filming. So,
CJ, if our listeners wanted to find out more information about the release locations, venues, and where they could buy tickets for the release after the premiere, where would be the best place or places for them to go?
Yeah, we have a few. The easiest one would be our website, Sherlock Holmes, Marenight.com. If you go on there, it has all the locations that we're showing the film at, along with where you can buy tickets. Um, or you can definitely just follow myself on Facebook, mainly, and you'll see a lot of the updates of where I'll be going with the film. Um, those are probably the two main spots, to be honest, that I would push people to check where it's playing. But yeah, follow us, man. I hope everyone can follow along the ride, whether it's on the Sherlock Holmes, Mare of the Night social media pages or just myself. We have the film in theaters this coming weekend here in San Antonio. And then we'll be at the Callow Theater in Kerrville, February 23rd. And we'll be doing the red carpet there as well. So it'll be a lot of fun for the Hill Country people.
Well, CJ, I wanted to thank you again. It's been a ton of fun, and I can't wait to see what you come up with next.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this for everyone. It was a lot of fun speaking with you about the film.